Welcome in. We are here back for another exciting episode. It's Mandy and Amani. Mandy, how was your weekend?
Amani, I'm in Renovation Nation right now. My weekends are about cabinets and windows and doors. And it's great. It's a lot of decisions. It's a lot of decisions to make. And I think my husband and I are very different decision makers.
Yes, this is
So
true.
I think they say if you can make it through renovation, you can make it through anything. So we're working.
Oh,
We're working on the marriage, Amani. The renovation
okay.
is helping us work
Okay.
on our
All
marriage.
right. All right. Practice
Yeah,
never hurt. Practice never
that's
hurt. Very
that's
good.
right. That's right. I'm very excited though. We're doing the whole house. We've been in this house 9 years. It's time,
Yeah.
and I am excited. And it is fun ultimately. At the beginning of this process, we had some really bad vendors, and now we've
Yeah.
we've we've settled on some really good. We've got some real good partners in crime. So I'm excited about it.
Do you remember when I was getting the outside of my house done and there was like banging noise as we were doing episodes?
Yeah, I do remember, Amani. I remember how loud that was, and we had to have you mute, and yeah, no, I do remember. Um,
So, yes.
yeah, was that the only renovation you did, though? Like, do you have any
Oh,
renovation advice for me? How to get through this time?
just pace yourself, really.
There
Pace
you go.
yourself.
Good,
Make sure
good.
you're a good contract person already, so make sure you have good contracts. Make sure that you don't pay the final balance without making sure doing walkthrough stuff like that I learned. Yeah, for sure. Take
Love that.
pictures before and after. That could be good if you ever want to sell your house. That's good. And for insurance purposes. Yeah.
Oh, good. You're chock full of we should do a whole mini episode on this, Amani.
We
That'll be our
could.
next mini episode next
We
week.
could. I've been through many renovations. Go ahead.
All right. What about you? What happened in your weekend? Are we still promoting the book? Are you able to have some downtime? What's going on?
Okay, this weekend, so this was like my annual guys trip to Vegas. This time I live in Vegas, so they came here for March Madness. We watched some
That's
games.
right. That's right.
We went to a couple restaurants. We bet on some games. And then yesterday, my college team is Maryland. So we were able to actually win in the last seconds on a buzzer beater.
I
And so that was
saw
quite exciting.
that.
Yes,
That was
yes.
very you know what? And I've been disappointed because there haven't been a lot of buzzer beaters. That was the fun one. In
Yeah,
our house, when a buzzer beater happens during March Madness, Scoot yells, "It's the madness!"
yeah,
And
yeah.
he didn't even
The
yell that.
only
He
one
just
all
said,
weekend. It was the only
"Yes,
one all weekend.
yes." Well,
So
congratulations to your team.
yes. And then to answer your first question, yes, still promoting the book. Head to Nashville this week for a speaker showcase. I did a couple interviews last week. I have an interview with NPR in Las Vegas Wednesday. So definitely
Awesome.
still in prime book promoting season.
'Tis the season. Fa la la la
Yes.
la. Good for you, Amani. It's awesome.
Yes. So I like boxing, so I want to know more about today's guest. And can you fill us in on who we're going to talk to? And then let's get to some questions.
Let's get to this guy. So we have a Golden Gloves boxing champion, a very successful wellness entrepreneur. He is a dad, he is a husband, he is an inventor of a fitness gadget and an all-around great human, Chad Yarvitz, who is the
Yes.
president of Xplicit Fitness.
All right. So we give you a round of applause as you come in.
It's very polite.
All right.
Hi, Chad.
So
Welcome.
welcome
Hi,
to the
you guys.
show. Yes. So
Thank you.
we're excited to have you. Since you are a boxing guy, I have to ask you off the jump your top three favorite boxers of all time.
Great question. I would say Floyd Mayweather Jr. is my favorite. He's who I modeled my own style after because when I was coming up, when I was competing 2006, 7, 8, he was the top dog and he was untouchable and I didn't like to get hit. So I was trying to emulate his style primarily. Uh, Yeah, I'd say he's number one. Marvin Hagler was another one of my favorites. Dude was just all steel, all balls, and wasn't afraid to take it to his opponents. He's one of the most well conditioned fighters of all time, especially in his era as well. I'd also say probably Manny Pacquiao. I used to spar at Wild Card Gym, and I would see him regularly and he was a gentleman. I came across him a couple times, and he was just nice and humble to everyone, despite being the number one guy in the world at the time with the media surrounding the gym. He was always just took his time to say hi to everybody, and didn't hold himself on a pedestal.
Okay. So I got a follow-up question to that, specifically about Marvin Hagler. So two-part question. He was part of a fight that was known as the best 3 rounds in boxing. Do you remember that fight? Any thoughts on that fight?
That was Tommy Hearns, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons. Growing up, my first boxing trainer told me that my style was somewhat like Hagler, so he told me to study him. And so that fight in particular, man, just no regard for their own safety, just throwing and want it so bad. They didn't duck each other. They weren't trying to play games. It was, and they earned that
Yes.
title, 3 best rounds of boxing.
3 best rounds of boxing. Amazing. And then I grew up in the DC area where Sugar Ray Leonard was from. And I remember Sugar Ray and Marvin Hagler had a controversial fight back in the day. Did you watch that? Who did you think really won the fight?
No, I haven't seen that. I watched it a long time ago when I was studying tape. I haven't seen it in years, so I'm a little rusty on it. But I know did they fought more than once, right?
I think it was only one time because right after that decision, which went to Sugar Ray Leonard, I think Hagler retired after that one. That was his last
Was that
fight.
happening?
Yeah.
Well, now you make me do some homework again, man. I'm gonna have to go watch it and come
Yeah.
back with
Yeah.
you on what I
Go watch
think.
it. It's a classic fight there. So yeah, so that just boxing. We got to talk the boxing first, Mandy, and also shout out Angela Johnson who's tuning in. She said marvelous Marvin was her favorite. She used to watch him with her dad. So awesome.
Aw, hi, Ange.
Take it away, Mandy.
Well, I want to talk. I want to hang back here. So you go from being this boxing champ and training and just living your life that way to starting a business. Like, how did this transition come to be? And was it originally Xplicit Fitness, or what was it originally? How did you go from being a boxer to being the boss?
Yeah, so to back up a little bit, I started my personal training journey in around 2006. Ended up in a club in San Luis Obispo called Kennedy Club Fitness, and they let me start a little boxing program on the pool deck out there. They gave me my own tent. I got my own equipment. I was a 20-year-old kid that was given this really good opportunity because my program was starting to work really well in one of their other clubs, and they had to shut this other club down. So they allowed me to move this whole facility basically within their facility at one of their locations. And I had dabbled in boxing previously in junior high, never competed, but just liked to train and got close to competition. And so I decided I wanted to do a small group boxing instruction thing there. And I took it pretty far and I did really well with it. And at 21 years old, I was approaching a 6-figure salary within that club. And I had a full on freak out and thought, if I don't try and pursue this sport myself as far as I can take it, I'm going to one day have regret because, your prime, especially in a sport as demanding as boxing, is very short. It's a short window. So I ended up quitting my job. I got accepted into Cal Poly after the second attempt. I got my tuition money back. I dropped out of school, moved to LA, and started competing, strictly competing boxing and doing personal training on the side to just make ends meet, along with growing a little medical marijuana under the garage, which was a little secret hideaway at the time. It wasn't legal, but I sold it to the clubs, and I was doing it legally. So kind of a little side gig.
Side gig.
But I was competing in boxing, and fast forward to when I decided to walk away from the sport, moved down to San Diego. My girlfriend at the time went to school here, and so I followed her. I had a history of following women all over the place, which ended up okay, but not at first.
I mean, did they know you were following them? What kind of?
Yeah, most of the time.
Okay.
9 out of 10. So to make a long story short, landed in San Diego, started doing some personal training. I had some odds and ends fitness jobs here, and decided I wanted to open my own club for various reasons that we might get to. But started a club out of my garage in a house in La Mesa that I was renting, and it snowballed from there. We outgrew the neighborhood. The neighbors were complaining about noise, and so that turned into me renting our first brick and mortar location in spring of 2010. And so I took all of my experience from the fight game, my previous experience from the fitness game, and I combined them to try and start this club, which was a rocky start, and I knew nothing about business, but we bootstrapped it, and here we are 15 years later. We're going strong.
I love that. Now I want to talk about the business, not the workout itself, because boxing isn't for everybody, but when I've seen what you've done, it feels like your workouts are for everybody. So what did you do to create this specific workout that feels like a workout, isn't intimidating, is approachable, and makes people feel like they've accomplished something at the end?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it was a lot of trial and error. It took a lot of years to figure out how we were going to carve this niche to be able to bring boxing to the masses. And when I first started my club in 2011, our first brick and mortar, I got a boxing ring and all of the traditional boxing equipment, speed bag, double end bag, heavy bags. And we did mock sparring and hand mitt work. And I was expecting what I really wanted to do was have fitness classes, but also bring up champions and be a professional champion trainer to world champions. And that was kind of the path that I was trying to take. But what kept happening is I would have dudes with tattoos and not great jobs coming in wanting to fight with very little experience. That took a lot of time and dedication to try and bring them up. And then I had stay-at-home moms and soccer moms. There was this two completely different demographics that were coming to the club. And guess which one had the money to pay for my services? It wasn't the dudes with no jobs that wanted to fight out of passion. It was the women that wanted to get in shape and learn self-defense and do it in a fun way that wasn't intimidating.
Yeah.
And traditional boxing clubs are very intimidating, sweaty, smelly. Same with most MMA clubs. And boxing itself is pretty intimidating. So I've always used humor and that approach to break down the barriers to kind of invite people in. And if you can go back into our 15 years of social media history, I wear a lot of dresses and makeup,
I was just about to say
wigs and costumes of all sorts. And a lot of it was to, break down that barrier of I'm not just some thug fighter who's looking to bloody you up and get you in the ring and make you wear a mouthpiece and punch. I'm trying to help bring this amazing, empowering sport to everyone. And that's kind of been our approach over the years.
While we're here, I'm so glad you gave that background. I want to hang here with the brand Xplicit. And when Chad says there's a lot of pictures and videos of him dressed as a lady, go follow him follow Xplicit Fitness, and it's Xplicit Fitness on Instagram. If nothing else, it'll make you giggle. It is so great. And you do such a great job of disarming what could be intimidating. But I want to talk about the brand because it's evolved over the years. So where did Xplicit come from? What was your original vision of the brand versus where it's at today?
So when I was given the opportunity to start this program at Kennedy Club Fitness in San Luis Obispo, I, from the very onset, wanted to have my own brand and my own club. And so one day I sat down with a notebook and just started writing down fitness club names to just freestyle it. And I believe I still have the original list. And Xplicit Fitness was one of the ones on the list. It was one of the finalists. And it was the one that I ended up going with. At the time, I was hardcore. I was a fighter and I wanted to be a world champion. And I prided myself on training harder and working harder than anyone in the sport, let alone in fitness. So it started with that aspect. But I was also brash and I didn't care what people thought about me, and I would always speak my mind. And I did the poor man's trademark at the time, which I still have the original envelope unopened in 2007. I drew up a logo design and I wrote Xplicit Fitness TM and mailed it to myself, which is, the original way that you can prove that that your mark has been used. And actually, fast forward to 2023, I believe, when I filed for the actual trademark. I didn't do it the entire time. They asked if I had any documentation proof to show that it had been in commerce for years previous. And I said, I had this thing and I'll send it to you if you need it. They took that down as part of their case to make sure to grant me the trademark, but they never actually asked for it. But it was kind of cool that it all came full circle.
Yeah.
Can you share with us, since we were talking about kind of getting in shape, like what is the fitness cliff and why do so many people fall off of it so early on in the year?
Yeah, so the fitness cliff is 6 weeks after January 1, where 80% of people who made a New Year's resolution will fail in that and give up on that New Year's resolution. 80% of people. And that's typically by the middle of February. And so it's a great name, right? It's easy to visualize. It's easy to capture. And so this year, in fact, at my club, we did the Conquer the Cliff Challenge. So in the beginning of January, we announced that we were going to do this 90-day challenge. And all we need to see is 30 workouts in 90 days. And that's going to get people past that fitness cliff into the middle of May. And we are more than halfway through now, I believe. We're about halfway, and people are just killing it. And our retention has skyrocketed. And I believe that our attrition at the club is the lowest. This month, we're going to check our numbers after the end of this month. I believe it's going to be the lowest attrition we've ever had in the history of Xplicit Fitness. And I attribute it almost primarily to hyper-focusing on not allowing people to fall off this fitness cliff and keeping them accountable.
Why do you feel that people fall off? Why the 80% is so large? Why is that the case?
There's a difference between motivation and discipline. And we are conditioned now these days more than ever to function off of motivation, which is whatever the shiny thing is hanging in front of us, we're going to go after it. Whatever gives us that quick dopamine hit to make us feel good at the moment is something that we're going to pursue. But that's not what carries you through to the end. When the going gets tough and life happens and you're dealing with A, B, and C issues and challenges, motivation goes out the window, and so does your routine, unless you establish a routine of discipline to go along with it. And that's all, the three original terms for Xplicit Fitness. It was desire, determination, and discipline. Those were the 3 Ds when I started this club back in 2010, because discipline is the number one thing that gets you through the dark nights and the tough days and the cheat weekends. And when you feel like your results just aren't coming quick enough, it sure isn't motivation that's going to keep you moving at that time.
And then my companion question to that would be, why do you feel that self-belief is the most powerful tool in our tool belt?
You are the only person that's with you for the entirety of your whole life. And that's something I've really kind of conceptualized lately. I've been on this spiritual journey, but really that's kind of how I boil it down. Is your parents are with you hopefully early on in life, and you've got your friendships and you've got your partnerships later, your own children, whatever carries you through each stage of the journey. But the only person that's with you for the entirety of the entire journey is you. And so if at any point you don't have a belief in self, there's going to be a loneliness and a feeling of being lost that a lot of people never quite get over, and they try and fill that void somehow in some way. So finding yourself and having a self-belief and trusting that no matter where you are and how alone you might be, if you're your own best company and you can trust yourself and love yourself, then that's what's going to carry you through at the end of the day. It's not your parents, it's not your spouse, it's not your children.
Love it. Okay, Manny, take
I
it.
want to talk about your spiritual journey. I mean, I've been a witness to some of it, and it's been really beautiful to see. But I wondered if you could just share, where are you at in your spiritual journey, and what are some of the phases of this that you've experienced over the last several years? I'll say 7 to 8 years or so.
Yeah, it's a pretty grand question. Yeah, it's hard to boil down. I think my first real touch with it was, at least my recognition of it was when I was boxing, because 85% of your boxing training is solo. You'll go to the gym, you'll do your hand work with your coach, you'll spar, but your conditioning, your studying, your skill work, your shadow boxing, all of it primarily is done alone. And so I spent 85% of that time by myself in my garage with the music on, sacrificing hanging with my friends as an early 20s kid, wanting to, I like to party. I used to party, and sacrificing a lot to be in that space. And in that, I had such a determination to be the world champion, to be the best on the planet, that it was something greater than myself that gave me a connection to more than self that I really couldn't interpret at the time, because I was such a young man that was very ego driven. But 20 years later, having a daughter and having gone through losses of friends and amazing animals and blossoming friendships later in life, I don't know. It's just kind of snowballed into being able to think beyond myself and being able to be less self-centered, to recognize the bigger picture. But there's a lot that goes into that. It's a lot of failures. I've failed more times than I've succeeded. I have more LLCs that are not currently running, which I had to fold, than I do LLCs that are currently running and working and profiting. So I think being humbled in more ways than one, in the ring, getting my ass kicked by the same people over and over and over again, and having to face that, kind of helps you find God, whatever God
Whatever
is
that
to you.
is, yeah.
Whatever it is, when you've got to find strength somewhere. And I think that started it. I've had a lot of therapy, and I've had a lot of experience with psychedelic medicine and plant medicine that has transformed my life. And in my belief, it has helped heal the TBI that I've had from years of football and boxing, a lot of emotional issues, a lot of compulsive behaviors. By integrating the work and the lessons and the things that have come to me from these very deep and intense psychedelic journeys as well. So maybe that encompasses it all. I know I jumped a bit, but that kind of encompasses my spiritual journey up to this point.
I love that. What I love about it is it's a mix of a bunch of things. It's not just like you found God. It's, you did the work, you're paying attention, you failed, you struggled, you're, experimenting with different substances. Like, it's not just one thing. And I think that's important for people to realize, like, your spiritual journey is not going to look the same today as it did like 5-10 years ago. And it's not going to look the same today as it will 5 years from now. So I appreciate you being humble and sharing all that with us. And I want to hang here with resilience, because I think resilience is one of your superpowers. So for anybody out there that is listening or that is watching and they're struggling, whether they're procrastinating or they're having a hard time pushing through something, what advice do you have for them to tap into their inner resilience?
Yeah, I'll share my own personal resilience when it comes to fighting and what that carried into Xplicit Fitness. And maybe that'll answer the question for people. For me, I'm pretty unemployable. I worked a few jobs growing up, and I can't be told what to do. Especially by someone who I can see right through the bullshit. If you've got an ego, or you have a power trip, or you're trying to prove something, or you're dysfunctional in your life, and then you're trying to tell me how and what to do for you or for this corporation, I have no filter, and I have lost jobs over and over because of my lack of being able to be tactful in those situations. So I think a big part of it is I couldn't work a normal job, and that pushed me to do my own thing. And every time that I came up against a wall, which was, let's say, $7,000 behind the ball the day before rent and payroll is due, there was multiple times I thought I should fold this thing up and get a real job. But I would then go down the line of, well, what does that real job look like? That means a loss of independence, a loss of this dream, a death of the vision. And that was a non-negotiable for me. So failure was not an option. As cheesy and cliche as that is, failure in the boxing ring was not an option for me. Failure in business is not an option for me for this business, which I'll get to. Failure as a father is not an option for me. There's certain non-negotiables for me. So I think when it comes to resilience, if you've decided you're going to do something and there's nothing that will ever stop you from doing it, then you will find a way to manifest and make it happen. But if you've allowed yourself an exit route or a foot out the door, you'll always take it at some point when the going gets tough. For example, I had a cycling studio. I wasn't all the way in when I opened it with a partner. That failed. I had another technology company for a sensor that was around one of our bags, and I liked it and I loved it and I was into it, but it wasn't my baby. It wasn't Xplicit Fitness. So when the going got tough and I knew I was going to have to sacrifice something from Xplicit to try and make this one happen, I wasn't going to sacrifice the thing I had poured my whole heart and soul into for 14 years to try and make another company work. So I took the exit on that one. So it's knowing your non-negotiable for the things you want to achieve more than anything.
I like this idea that you're bringing out about sacrifice for resilience. Like, what are you willing to sacrifice to be resilient? Like you've sacrificed some business situations, you sacrificed time to be resilient. That was my takeaway from that. That's good stuff, Chad.
So,
Yeah, and that's not all. Sorry to interrupt. That's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
I was divorced. I'm remarried. My first marriage, in large part, fell apart because I was emotionally unavailable, because I was married to the game more than I was married to my wife, and I was unwilling to bend a lot of things in order to make my dream come true. And so I was young and naive. And now, as an older man that's more mature, I'll put quotations around that, I can still make sacrifices for certain things, but there are more non-negotiables in my life now that supersede my need to succeed in business, which is easy to say once you've already got the ball rolling and the systems in place and the process is working for you, right? So I'm fortunate at this point to be able to sacrifice some things in business and my pursuit for success there, because I don't want to go down the same bad path with behavior patterns and relationship issues that I've dealt with in the past.
Yeah.
now, first of all, shout out to Mia West. Good to see you. Jenny Goldberg Perrin is here with us. Welcome back, Jenny.
Aw, all the
And Kelly
Chad
Lester.
fans.
What's up,
Hi,
Fred?
Mia. Hi, Jenny.
Yes, Kelly Lester has a question, and she's here. What first got you hooked on boxing? Is there one moment you can trace that back to?
Oh, hell yeah. Get my ass kicked on the playground in third grade. I always liked Taekwondo, karate. I grew up watching Bruce Lee and all those. And so my parents got me into karate at a young age. And my elementary school, public school in Newhall, California, it was almost right down the middle, half Hispanic and half suburban white kids. And we just clashed. It wasn't a racial thing. We were too young to be racist. It was just, there was such a cultural difference that we always butting heads. And all my friends were pussies, and I was the only one fighting. And so I was getting my ass kicked all the time. And I moved schools, and then I fought at the other school, which then goes to show that it wasn't their problem. It was a me problem. I had anger issues. But again, I was wired in a way that I'm not going to take shit from anybody, almost to a fault. And so it got me in a lot of trouble. But a flying butterfly kick is not a practical way to defend yourself on the playground. So despite my efforts in karate, I was still getting my butt whooped. And that's when my dad decided to put me into boxing at 13. And then I realized that, okay, well, there's flashy martial arts sports that are, you get a belt, you wear a gi, you do a form to get the next stripe on your belt, and then there's combat sports. And so once I realized that the effectiveness of boxing was a real combat sport for self-defense, that's what got me hooked.
Got it. Okay. You also mentioned failure, that you failed many times in the past. Do you have a favorite failure of yours, and why is that specific failure your favorite?
Yeah. So my last amateur fight, so I was 6-1, and I lost my third fight, which was a good lesson because I'd won two and I was 2-0. Thought I was bad. I got my butt whooped in the third one. That was a good lesson. But I went on to, I decided at that point I'm not going to get beat again. And I went on to win a California Golden Glove title, and it was a 3-day tournament. My last amateur fight, which we didn't plan to be my last amateur fight. I was going to try and do that, potentially go to the Olympics, where we had a lot of plans to pad my amateur record before going into the pro ranks. And my last amateur fight was in Long Beach, California, in an airplane hangar converted into a garage gym and packed to the house. And it was middle of summer, 105 in that thing, must have been. And I went into the ring and fought this dude who came out with a bunch of confidence, and he shattered my nose in the first round. And I saw white. I felt this draining liquid going to the back of my head before I realized what happened. And it was draining. I know it's a little disgusting, but it was draining down my back of my throat before I knew that it was, my bone had been shattered, and it was draining into the back of my throat, and I was having to swallow it. And so the round ended. I go back to the corner, and my trainer says, "Hey, how you doing? You're doing great in there." I said, "My nose is broken." He's like, "No, it isn't." And he was this little Mexican dude. He's like, "No, it's not, Chad. What are you talking about?" And I was like, "It's broken. It's broken." And he felt it, and he's like, "Oh, should we stop the fight?" I said, "No, I feel good. I need to kick this guy's ass." Went back out. Blood is now pouring the other way like a faucet, like a Stephen King movie. The ref stops the fight, and typically in an amateur bout, if there's a broken bone or a shattered nose like this, they stop the fight no matter what. They either call it a no contest or a TKO. And I begged him. I said, "Don't stop this fight, please." And he looked at me and he says, "Are you okay to fight?" I said, "Whatever you do, please don't stop the fight. I'm going to go knock this guy out." And he wiped me up and he said, "Go get him." And I went on to almost knock this guy out and win that fight by unanimous decision. And I think, so that answers your question. I think at the end of the first round, I thought, this nose is broken. And once you get a broken nose in the boxing game, it's very difficult to breathe at that point. It's very difficult to continue. And I decided in that moment that I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to take a knee. And then to go out and win that fight was one of the most pivotal moments in my life, because I knew that once I could do that, I'm pretty much unstoppable. And the only thing that could stop me is my own decision to quit.
Okay. Enzo Johnson has a question for you. On the subject of sacrifice and resilience, do you ever miss the clarity and singular focus that was required during your training days as you've transitioned into more of a multifaceted life?
Ooh, good question.
Every single day, I miss it. I didn't realize that how much of the boxing game was my therapy and my clarity and my religion. And it wasn't till years after seeing the dysfunction through a failed marriage, through therapy, through always seeking and always grasping and chasing dopamine. And a book that changed my life was called The Molecule of More. I don't know the author offhand, but The Molecule of More is a transformative book that tells us how we are driven by dopamine biologically. And so once I read that book, it changed my view of that. Oh, a lot of how I feel and what I'm doing is outside of my control. Now that I know what's happening, I can make critical decisions once I have that feeling of needing to seek. But yeah, to answer your question, I miss that every day, and I've been seeking it ever since. And I have found it through spirituality and through challenging hunts. I try and do some backcountry hunting, and I love connection to nature. But yeah, every single day, I miss that.
Okay. We also, so The Molecule of More is written by Daniel Lieberman. I put the link to that in the chat. Also, Michael E. Long, so it's co-authored there. You've mentioned therapy a couple times. Most men avoid therapy like the plague. How did you gain the courage to actually pursue therapy and then remain in it?
2015, December 2015, I knew that my first marriage was coming to an end. I decided to leave December 31st, and I'll never forget staying at my father's house. And I drove down to North Park, San Diego, and I was walking around at 6 a.m. on January 1st. everyone's coming down from their party. There's people stumbling, having a good time, and I'm in this headspace, completely sober, sleep deprived. I hadn't slept all night, and I'm walking around, just feeling lost and feeling like, you know, as a 24, 25-year-old man who started Xplicit Fitness, Golden Glove champion, bought a house, had a dog, then went on to have a kid. You know, I had everything in the white picket fence to go along with it. Thought I had the whole world figured out. And at this moment, to then realize that I knew nothing and I felt lost. That same week, I got severe strep throat. That following week, my father was diagnosed with stage 4 bladder cancer. And so not only getting hit and knocked down, but getting punched while you're knocked down, I was at a complete loss and didn't know what to do. And I felt scared and I felt really sad. And so I had to go and turn somewhere. Sorry, it makes me a little emotional. And so I think feeling that lost and lost to a point of feeling scared, you know, I don't care how tough you are or what kind of man you've you know, held yourself up to be, you got to find help. And so that was a turning point. I needed help.
Got it. Before we get to Mandy, one more question from Mia. She says, you've always stayed true to who you are in business, which is something she's admired over the 15 years she trained with you. Congrats, Mia. Do you think that's ever presented challenges for the business? And on the flip side, what have you gained from staying authentic?
Ooh.
Love you, Mia. That's a great question. It has presented challenges for the business, for sure. I've lost potential partnerships and I've squandered somewhat lucrative pathways with large corporations that have reputations to uphold. And once they do enough digging, I know a lot. I am successful, and I'm well spoken, and I can present in front of large groups. I'm everything that a lot of fitness companies are looking for as a representative. But if you dig deep enough and you really see what I put out there, it can be pretty harsh and it can be a little controversial. And so a lot of brands are afraid to get in bed with that. And so I have sacrificed opportunities for being who I am. And, you know, early on, there was a couple of moments where I said, wow, you know, should I clean up my image and should I change who I am and you know, give everyone the PG version in order to make it in this business. And I'm glad I didn't, because those are relationships I wouldn't have really felt like I wanted to pursue anyway. And it would have been inauthentic to myself. And as hard as it's been and as tough as I've had to learn the hard way to do everything, nobody can take credit for what I've done, and nobody can say that they made me, which is big, and I'm proud of that.
Nice. Mandy, back to you.
Yeah, I agree with Mia. I think I love how true you've stayed to the brand and you attract. So I know you talked about, you know, you might have, you know, shoved some people off, but I think you've attracted a lot of the right people too, you know, by staying true to yourself and who you are. So I do want to hang here with the business for a second, because you had said earlier, you know, the business is booming, and I've watched you, you know, go from a larger gym to a smaller gym and a much more focused clientele. I've watched you thrive through COVID and take so many twists and turns. So like, what do you think you're doing right now in the business that is working? Because I know you've talked a little bit about like the coffee sleeves and the signage and your social media and different tactics. So like, what are you doing right now that you think is making the business thrive? And is it anything different than what you've done in the past?
Yeah, I think it's a two-part answer to that. I think COVID was a blessing in disguise for us. We had a huge space. We had 6,000 square feet, and we had multiple programs running. And I had people renting space. They had their own gym within my gym, and we were a hot mess. And I was trying to duplicate the multiplex that I worked at in San Luis Obispo, this complex that has everything all in one: massage and yoga and spin and strength and boxing. And COVID came down and swept the rug out from underneath us, which at first was the worst thing that could have happened. But in that time, it gave me space to think, can I scale this? And if I do, what's it going to take from me? How much of my life is this going to cut short from stress and anxiety to try and scale this monster that we have? Or do I go back to the drawing board and really figure out how we can create a model that we can scale? And that's not all from inside my head. I read Building a Story Brand, and I should have these books next to me here because now that I'm referencing them, I don't remember the name of the author, but Building a Story Brand was a huge pivotal book for me, along with the E-Myth, the entrepreneurial myth. Those two books, I read them during that time, and it blew my mind. And there was multiple times I had to put those down and walk around and say, holy shit, I've been doing this wrong this whole time. And so I reconfigured the whole model, and we created a franchise model out of Xplicit. We went from 6,000 square feet down to 1,500 square feet. We went from 12-person classes. We're able to expand to 17-person classes in a smaller footprint. We changed the logo. We changed the branding. We changed our online presence and altered it in a way, and changed everything to make it scalable, like McDonald's. And whether you have one location or 55,000 locations, each one has to operate the exact same way. And then once I brought that in, and it made it very easy to make decisions on what we're going to add, what we're going to subtract, what we're going to pursue, and what we're not. And that's why we have a successful club today. However, this was January of 2024, last year, we were spinning our wheels and we kind of hit a ceiling and we weren't growing. And much like therapy, I broke down and admitted that I didn't know what I was doing. I've been piecing this together in trial by error for so many years. And I had to admit that I'm not the best businessman. I'm a great trainer and motivator, but that's the least of what you do when you start scaling a business. And so I joined a company called Loud Rumor, and it's this coaching company. This guy, Mike Arce, is this brilliant guy who's spent years doing SEO and coaching multiple different business models, and he realized he needed to niche. So he niched on coaching fitness businesses, boutique businesses to scale. And we joined them as of June of last year. And as of today, we are 50% more revenue month over month than we were a year ago. And that's growing like this. So those two things have completely changed the game for us.
It's amazing. And I'm sure it was an investment, like a financial investment that you might not have made otherwise. I think that's a good lesson for people of like, sometimes you have to spend money to make money. Sometimes you have to make the investment to completely chart a new path for yourself too. And sometimes you do make the investment and then it nothing good happens right away, but it takes time and you have to be a little patient. So I'm glad to hear that. It's a really good story.
Yeah, thanks. And it was a big investment, big financial investment. I went back and forth on it because we had invested in advertising and other things in the past. So I was scared this was just gonna be another thing we were going to dump money into that wasn't going to pay off.
Yeah.
But it did, and it has, and it's worth its weight in gold.
Nice. We've come to the time in the show where we flip the script. We allow you to ask both myself and Mandy any question you like. Nothing is off limits. So who do you want to ask the question to first, and what is said question?
I think you to start, Amani, being in the music industry. What is and I think writing a book, I think both. What is your creative process? Is there like a method? Do you meditate? Do you work out first? Like, what is your creative process to feel like you can get in the zone and flow with either music or writing?
Yeah, I think I definitely don't work out before because I'll be too tired. But I think I'll say it's a mixture of a lot of Mariah Carey, picking the nice times of day. Usually mornings, mid-mornings are good for me to like write if I have the time to plan out when I can be creative, because sometimes there is no, like, you have to be creative on the spot. Also, I found that if I were to reach some sort of blocks, these like not staycations, but like a road trip. For example, I went away to Minnesota to do the majority of the writing for my second book. I had to leave California, so that helped me remove all the distractions. That's very effective. So like maybe you go a couple hours away where you have to have a little staycation or a mini vacation. So that helps with the creative process. But really for me, it's like music, routine, and consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mandy.
Mandy, I've got a question for you.
Ready. I'm ready.
So I've had the pleasure of meeting Luca multiple times.
Yes.
An
Yes.
amazing dog. I believe it's a human trapped in a dog's body.
It's true.
And I honestly felt the same about Pepper. Pepper was my
Oh,
Cane
I
Corso
love
Mastiff,
Pepper.
the best dog in the world. Having that dog made me realize that a dog is not just a dog. Some dogs can be super dumb and nothing behind the eyes, but there's certain animals that are just like on another level. Do you feel that way about Luca? And if so, like how do you think about your relationship with your dog?
Oh my God, that's such a nice question. You're gonna make me cry. Um, so first of all, I was never a dog person. In fact, when I was a little girl, my we had dogs, I guess. I don't much remember them. And my mom said that I would pull on the dog's ear. I would just torment the dogs. And then one time she heard like the sound of the dog in the other room, but the dog was with her, so she was confused and she went to the back of the house and I was pulling on my own ear making the noise. So like I didn't understand dogs. Like I was not a good dog owner. I never wanted a dog, but when I started dating Scooter, he had a dog and I'm like, I'm not gonna make friends with the dog just to impress the guy. So like his dog was fine. But after Cleo had passed, we decided we get a dog together. And I was very skeptical. So I'm not a dog person. And we got Luca, and she has completely turned me into a creepy dog mom. I mean, she like I have a sweatshirt with her face on it that somebody like her exact face that like
I've seen
somebody
it.
took a picture of. Yeah, you've seen the sweatshirt. I love her so much and I do think every morning I say you bring kindness and joy to all beings. And I just look at her in the face and I believe that she's looking at me and she believes that, you know, and it also I think having a dog for me has made me stop to be like everything isn't so serious and look at the joy like look at I see the joy she brings people like I'll anywhere we take her everybody stops and is instantly smiling and happy and it's like why like I want to be a human like that like where
Mhm.
I go somewhere and I instantly bring joy or whatever I just I've learned a lot from watching her, you know, she's a good girl, she's powered by hugs. Like if you like if she doesn't have enough hugs, she doesn't have enough energy, you know, it's like there's so many life
Always.
lessons in all of that. It's so simple. And yeah, I love her. She's changed me forever. She's made me a softer dog lady. And I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever be able to have another animal because there's just nobody like her. Yeah.
Totally. I
That was a
agree.
good question. Thank
Great
you.
question. So I'm really particularly interested in your answer to this question that I ask everyone, but you have such a high amount of self-awareness and you recognize the journey you've been on. So I'm really curious if we were to go talk to Chad at age 18, perhaps when you graduated from high school, and give him advice based on everything you learned so far in life, what advice would you give your younger self?
Hmm. I think first and foremost is trust yourself. Uh, the journey's like we talked about, the journey's going to get wild and bumpy. There's going to be ups and downs, and in the whole process, just trust yourself because you've got it. You've got this, and you're going to get it figured out. And um, you know, always be careful about your decisions, but don't second guess yourself.
Love it. Yeah. Over to Manny to close us out. Go ahead.
Well, I want to build on that because Chad is about to have a second baby. So
Congrats.
I want to ask almost second dad Chad, what advice would you give new dad Chad? So right before your first kid was born, now knowing what you know now, like what advice would you give yourself from a parenting standpoint?
That's a really good one. Work on yourself. Work on yourself all the way and become healed and find how to be and how to love yourself 100% because you cannot love anything or anyone at full capacity until you love yourself that much despite your flaws and setbacks and failures. So that's the first thing, and then everything else will take care of itself.
That's beautiful. And how can we support you? You've spent an hour with us. I firsthand know the value of your workouts and how much thought you put into the actual training of it all. Like, how can we support you and how can we support Explicit Fitness?
Yeah, thanks. If you're in San Diego, come by the club for a free class. Come hang out with us. We've got events going on all the time. Follow us on Instagram. Talk to us. Like, follow, message, send us DMs. I mean, I just love talking to people. People bring up questions all the time and seek advice and expertise. And I'm not looking to get paid for every interaction. That's not, luckily the business is doing great. And so just to be there for people and to be a sounding board or talk anything from fitness, nutrition, sleep, spirituality, and psychedelics, anything that I feel experienced in, I love to share the information. So I invite everybody to reach out and say what's up.
Awesome. Well, we just want to say keep doing the work you're doing, particularly with the fitness, but also like I admire how you're so open talking about mindset and your journey. So please continue to be open with people because you can inspire many, many people. So keep up the great work.
Thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yes.
thanks for being here, Chad. You are an inspiration.
That was
Yes.
great.
Yes. We're going to put you back in the green room momentarily. So give us a moment. Round of applause for Chad here with Xplicit Fitness. There we go. All right, Mandy, another great, powerful interview. Who do we have to look forward to next week?
We have Portia Smith next week. She's a life coach
Okay.
and a real go-getter. So I'm excited to have her on the show. She's also a San Diegan. So we're really bringing San Diego forward this month. Yeah.
Yes, it's the month of San Diego. We love it. Wouldn't want it any other way. For those of you watching live, thank you to Angela, Mia, everyone who joined us live. We appreciate the interaction. Kelly, Jenny, thank you all. And if you're listening or watching the replay, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the platform you're watching or listening on. Feel free to share a friend, and we will see you next week for another episode of Adventures in Business. Take
See
care,
you.
everyone.
Bye.